Zara pressed her face against the cold observation window of the research station, watching the swirling purple storms of Kepler 442b rage below. The atmospheric disturbances had been going on for 3 rotations now, and her team was getting restless. As the lead xenobiologist for the Vorthan Empire's Deep Space Exploration Division, she had seen many worlds, but none quite as violent as this one. Her pale blue skin reflected in the reinforced glass as she traced patterns in the condensation with one of her 4 slender fingers. The Vorthans had been exploring the galaxy for over 2,000 cycles, cataloging worlds and species with methodical precision. Birthdays, celebrations, personal milestones, these were foreign concepts to her people. They measured time in achievements, in discoveries, in the advancement of knowledge. Individual existence was noted only in terms of contribution to the collective understanding of the universe. Behind her, the communication array crackled to life. Station Commander Zara, came the voice of her second-in-command, Lieutenant Kex. We're receiving an unidentified transmission from the planet's surface. The signal is unusual. Zara turned away from the window, her elongated limbs moving with the fluid grace typical of her species. Unusual how? It appears to be coming from a structure we didn't detect in our initial scans. The architecture doesn't match any known civilization in our databases. And, Commander, Kex paused, his orange eyes flickering with uncertainty. The signal contains mathematical sequences we've never encountered before. This was exactly what Zara had been hoping for. 3 months of orbiting this storm-racked planet had yielded nothing but atmospheric readings and mineral compositions. The possibility of discovering a new form of intelligent life sent a thrill through her scientific mind. Prepare a landing party, she ordered, already moving toward the equipment bay. I want full atmospheric suits, portable lab equipment, and our most sensitive scanning devices. Commander, the storms will provide excellent cover if this species is hostile, Zara interrupted. Besides, our shields can handle atmospheric disturbances. We've weathered worse. 20 minutes later, Zara found herself strapped into the pilot's seat of their exploration craft, with Kex and 2 other team members secured behind her. The small ship dropped through the upper atmosphere like a silver needle threading through purple silk. Lightning crackled around their energy shields as they descended, and the turbulence made even her steady hands grip the controls tighter. The source of the transmission led them to what appeared to be a massive crater near the planet's equator. As they broke through the lower cloud layer, Zara gasped. Where she had expected to see the aftermath of some cosmic impact, instead there was a perfectly circular valley filled with structures that seemed to defy physics. Buildings curved upward in impossible spirals, connected by bridges that appeared to be made of crystallized light. And at the center of it all stood a tower that seemed to reach toward the sky like a metallic tree. Are you getting these readings? Kex whispered from behind her. Zara checked her instruments twice before responding. According to our sensors, those buildings are generating their own gravitational fields. The energy signatures are off the charts. This is technology we've never seen before. As they descended toward what looked like a landing platform, Zara noticed something else that made her scientific training freeze in amazement. The storms that had been raging across the planet's surface for days simply ended at the edge of the circular valley. Not gradually, but as if someone had drawn an invisible line and declared that weather could not cross it. Their ship touched down with barely a whisper on the smooth, pearl-colored surface of the platform. Zara ran through her pre-exit checklist, but her mind was racing with possibilities. First contact protocols demanded careful observation and gradual approach, but the mathematical signal they had received suggested intelligence far beyond what most species achieved. Atmospheric readings show breathable air within the valley, reported scientist Vec from his monitoring station. Oxygen-nitrogen mixture, pressure within acceptable ranges for our physiology. It's as if this place was designed to accommodate multiple species types. Zara made the decision that would change her life forever. We go out without full environmental suits. Standard protective gear only. If this civilization is advanced enough to control weather and gravity, they've likely been watching us since we entered orbit. Better to show trust than fear. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, and Zara stepped onto an alien world for the 100th time in her career. But this time felt different. This time, the very air seemed to hum with anticipation. The platform they had landed on was part of a larger structure that appeared to grow from the valley floor like organic crystal. Walkways branched out in multiple directions, each one leading toward different sections of the impossible city. But what caught Zara's attention was the figure approaching them from the central tower. He moved with a confident stride that somehow seemed both alien and familiar. Tall by most species standards, with pale skin and brown hair that caught the filtered light streaming down through the controlled atmosphere above. He wore clothing that looked simple but was clearly made from materials that shifted and flowed like liquid metal. As he drew closer, Zara could see that his features were remarkably humanoid, but there was something in his eyes that spoke of intelligence beyond his apparent age. When he stopped about 10 feet away from their landing party, he raised one hand in what appeared to be a universal gesture of greeting. "Welcome," he said, and somehow Zara understood every word despite never having heard his language before. "I am Dr. Marcus Chun, and I have been waiting a very long time to meet you." Kex moved closer to Zara, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. "Commander, how is he speaking our language?" But Zara was studying the human's face, noting the kindness in his expression and the complete lack of fear or hostility. "Dr. Chun," she said slowly, testing the unfamiliar name. "You are human?" "I am," Marcus replied with a smile that seemed to light up his entire face. "And, unless I'm very much mistaken, you are Vorthans. I've been studying your culture and language for quite some time, hoping that someday we might meet under exactly these circumstances." "You've been studying us?" Zara felt her scientific curiosity override her caution. "How long have you known about our exploration missions?" "Long enough to prepare this place as a proper meeting ground." Marcus gestured toward the impossible city around them. "Long enough to learn that your people value knowledge above all else, and that you approach new discoveries with careful observation rather than aggression. Long enough to hope that we might become friends." There was something about the way he said friends that made Zara's chest feel warm in a way she had never experienced before. Among her people, relationships were functional, based on shared research goals and compatible work styles. The concept of friendship, of emotional bonds between individuals, was as foreign to her as the idea of celebrating one's personal existence. "This city," she said, gesturing toward the crystalline spires around them. "You built this." Marcus laughed, and the sound was like music Zara didn't know she had been waiting her whole life to hear. "I had some help from the local environment. This planet has some very unique properties once you learn how to work with them instead of against them. But, come, let me show you something that I think will interest a xenobiologist of your reputation. You know my field of study?" Dr. Zara of the Vorthan Deep Space Exploration Division graduated top of your class from the Academy on Vorth Prime, author of 17 papers on xenological adaptation theory, and the first of your people to successfully establish communication with the crystalline entities of the Andromeda border. "Yes, I know who you are." Zara felt something she had never experienced before, a flutter of what humans might call pride mixed with nervousness at being so thoroughly known by someone she had just met. "How could you possibly know all that?" Marcus finished with another one of those remarkable smiles. "Because I've been preparing for this meeting for longer than you might think. And because today is a very special day." "What makes today special?" Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her fully, his eyes bright with an emotion Zara couldn't identify. "Today, my dear Dr. Zara, is your birthday. And I think it's time someone taught you what that really means." Zara stared at Marcus with complete confusion, her blue skin taking on a slightly deeper shade that indicated mental stress among her people. "My birthday? I do not understand this term. Vorthans do not celebrate the rotation cycles of our emergence from the breeding pools." Marcus stepped closer, and Zara noticed that his approach didn't trigger any of her usual defensive responses. Instead, she felt oddly comfortable in his presence, as if some part of her recognized something familiar in this strange human. "That's exactly what I thought you might say," Marcus replied gently. "Your people measure worth through achievement and contribution to knowledge. Individual existence is just a tool for advancing your civilization's understanding of the universe. But Humans have a different perspective on what makes life meaningful. Kex cleared his throat behind them, clearly uncomfortable with the philosophical direction of the conversation. Commander, perhaps we should focus on understanding how this human came to be here, and what his technological capabilities might mean for Lieutenant. Zara interrupted without taking her eyes off Marcus. Begin standard first contact documentation procedures. I want detailed scans of the surrounding technology and full atmospheric readings. But maintain respectful distance. She turned back to Marcus, who was watching this exchange with obvious amusement. You say today is my birthday. How could you possibly know when I was born? Because, Marcus said, beginning to walk toward the central tower, I've been monitoring Vorthan exploration missions for the past 3 years. Your ship's personnel files contain birth dates according to your calendar system. Today marks exactly 27 Vorthan cycles since your emergence. By human standards, you're celebrating your birthday. But celebration implies that individual existence has value beyond function, Zara said, falling into step beside him. This is not how my people think. Marcus stopped beside what appeared to be a fountain, except instead of water, it flowed with liquid light that reformed itself into different patterns every few seconds. Tell me something, Zara. In all your years of studying alien life forms, have you ever wondered what it would feel like to be valued for who you are rather than what you accomplish? The question hit Zara like a physical impact. She had spent her entire life earning recognition through discovery and research, but she had never considered the possibility that her existence might have value independent of her contributions to Vorthan knowledge. I know, she admitted. Such thoughts would be considered selfish among my people. What if I told you that the capacity for individual joy, for personal celebration, for marking the passage of your unique life through time, is actually one of the most powerful forces in the universe? Marcus reached out and touched the flowing light, which immediately began forming shapes around his fingers. What if I told you that happiness isn't selfish, but is actually a form of energy that can literally reshape reality? As if to demonstrate his point, the light fountain began producing tiny figures that looked remarkably like Zara herself, complete with her elongated limbs and pale blue skin. But these light figures were doing something no Vorthan would ever do. They were dancing. This is impossible, Zara breathed, watching her light self spin and leap through the air with obvious joy. Light cannot take complex forms without massive energy input and sophisticated holographic projection systems. Unless, Marcus said quietly, the light is responding to emotional energy. Unless joy and celebration actually have measurable effects on the fundamental forces of physics. Behind them, scientist Vex's voice carried across the plaza. Commander, you need to see these readings. The energy signatures around that fountain are unlike anything in our databases. It's as if the matter itself is being influenced by some form of bioelectric field. Zara looked from the dancing lights to Marcus's face, seeing something there that she was beginning to recognize as genuine care for her well-being. You are saying that human emotions can affect physical matter? I'm saying that consciousness, when focused through genuine positive emotion, can do things that most species consider impossible. And I'm saying that you've never experienced this because Vorthans have systematically eliminated individual emotional expression from their culture. The implications of what Marcus was suggesting began to sink in. If what you claim is true, then my people have been limiting themselves. We could have been using emotional energy to enhance our research capabilities. Marcus laughed again, and this time several of the light figures began laughing too, their tiny voices creating a harmony that seemed to resonate through the crystalline structures around them. Zara, you're thinking like a scientist again. This isn't about making your research more efficient. This is about discovering that your life has value just because you exist. But how can existence have value without purpose? Watch this, Marcus said, moving to stand directly in front of the fountain. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, and Zara could swear she felt the air around them become charged with some kind of energy. When Marcus opened his eyes, the fountain erupted in a display of colors and patterns that made Zara gasp. The light formed into a perfect replica of her research station orbiting above the planet, complete with tiny figures moving around inside it. But then, the display changed, showing the same station but filled with Vorthons who were laughing, celebrating, embracing each other with obvious affection. That's impossible, Zara whispered. Vorthons don't express emotion that way. They could, Marcus said softly. They could learn that achievement is more meaningful when shared with people who care about your happiness. They could discover that individual joy doesn't diminish collective knowledge, it enhances it. Zara felt something stirring in her chest, an unfamiliar warmth that seemed to spread outward from her primary heart. Why are you showing me this? What do you gain from teaching me about human emotional concepts? Marcus turned to face her fully, and the expression in his eyes made Zara feel as if she was seeing him for the first time. Because 3 months ago, I intercepted a transmission from your ship. It was a personal log entry you made, thinking no one would ever hear it. You talked about watching the storms on this planet and wondering what it would feel like to dance in the rain instead of just analyzing its chemical composition. Zara's skin flushed a deep blue. That had been a moment of weakness, a brief philosophical tangent that she had immediately regretted. You listened to my private logs? I listened to the voice of someone who was longing for something she didn't even know existed. I heard a brilliant scientist who had never been told that her capacity for wonder and joy was just as important as her capacity for analysis. The warmth in Zara's chest was spreading now, making her feel lightheaded and strangely energetic. I should not have made such recordings. They serve no scientific purpose. Zara, Marcus said, moving closer until they were standing just a few feet apart. What if I told you that the most important discovery you could make isn't about alien life forms or atmospheric phenomena? What if the most important discovery is learning how to celebrate the fact that you are alive? Before Zara could respond, the fountain behind them exploded in a shower of golden light that formed itself into a complex geometric pattern above their heads. The pattern pulsed with energy that seemed to respond to the beating of Zara's hearts. What is happening? She asked, staring up at the light display. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since landing on this planet, Zara found herself smiling back. That, my dear Dr. Zara, is what happens when someone begins to understand what it means to be happy to be alive. And we're just getting started. The golden light pattern above them began to shift and change, forming what looked like a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. But this wasn't any star chart Zara had ever seen. Lines of energy connected different systems, pulsing with colors that seemed to represent something more than just gravitational relationships. Marcus, Zara said, her scientific mind struggling to process what she was observing. What am I looking at? You're seeing the galaxy as it really is, Marcus replied, his voice filled with quiet wonder. Those lines represent the flow of consciousness between civilizations. The colors show the intensity of emotional energy being generated by different species. Zara studied the map more carefully, noting that some sectors glowed brightly, while others appeared dim or completely dark. The Vorthon territories, she said slowly. They are almost completely without color. Your people have achieved incredible technological advancement and scientific understanding, Marcus agreed. But they've also eliminated most forms of emotional expression. From an energy perspective, Vorthon space is nearly invisible. And human space? Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Marcus pointed to a region of the map that blazed with every color imaginable, streams of energy flowing outward to connect with dozens of other civilizations. Humans are emotional creatures. We celebrate, we mourn, we love, we dream. And all of that emotion creates energy that ripples across space in ways your scientists have never detected. Lieutenant Kex approached cautiously from behind them. Commander, I'm getting some very strange readings from our orbital station. It's as if our instruments are detecting energy signatures that weren't there before. Zara looked up at the light display, then back at Marcus. You are saying that my presence here, my emotional state, is somehow affecting reality on a measurable scale? I'm saying that you're beginning to wake up to abilities that your species has forgotten they possessed, Marcus said. And your crew is starting to detect the changes because consciousness affects quantum fields in ways that most civilizations never explore. The implications were staggering. If Marcus was correct, then Vorthon science had been missing a fundamental force of nature simply because they had eliminated emotional expression from their culture. The potential applications for research, for technology, for understanding the universe itself, were beyond calculation. I need to understand how this works, Zara said, her scientific training reasserting itself. If emotional energy can affect physical reality, then there must be measurable parameters, reproducible effects, quantifiable. Zara, Marcus interrupted gently. You're doing it again. Doing what? Trying to turn this into research data instead of experiencing it directly. Marcus gestured to the fountain, which was now creating tiny fireworks of light that seemed to respond to the tone of their conversation. The most important part of understanding consciousness energy isn't measuring it. It's learning how to generate it. But how does one generate emotional energy intentionally? Zara asked. Among my people, emotions are considered random neurochemical responses that interfere with logical thinking. Marcus smiled and moved to stand beside the fountain. Let me show you something. Close your eyes and think about your favorite discovery. The moment when you understood something about the universe that you had never known before. Zara hesitated, then closed her eyes and remembered the first time she had successfully communicated with the crystalline entities of the Andromeda border. The moment when their alien thoughts had suddenly made sense to her, when she realized that intelligence could exist in forms completely unlike anything she had imagined. Now, Marcus said softly, instead of analyzing what you learned, just remember how it felt to understand. Remember the wonder, the excitement, the joy of discovery. As Zara focused on the memory, she felt that strange warmth in her chest growing stronger. The sensation spread through her entire body, making her feel simultaneously energized and peaceful. Open your eyes, Marcus whispered. When Zara looked, the fountain had transformed completely. Instead of abstract patterns of light, it was now displaying a perfect recreation of her first contact with the crystalline entities. But, more than that, she could somehow feel the emotions of the memory being reflected back to her, amplified and enriched. That's impossible, she breathed. How can a fountain know my memories? It's not reading your memories, Marcus explained. It's responding to the emotional energy you're generating by reliving a moment of genuine happiness. The fountain is just a tool for focusing and amplifying that energy. Scientist Vex's voice crackled over the communicator. Commander, our instruments are going crazy up here. We're detecting energy patterns that seem to be originating from your exact location. Whatever you're doing down there, it's creating some kind of field effect that we've never seen before. Zara looked at Marcus with growing understanding. You are not just showing me party tricks. You are demonstrating a fundamental force that my people have overlooked. Humans call it many things. Joy, love, celebration, wonder, hope. But, scientifically speaking, it's all the same phenomenon. Consciousness directing energy through positive emotional focus. The galaxy map above them began to shift again, and this time Zara could see new connections forming. Thin lines of energy were extending from their current location toward Vorthan space, as if her growing understanding was creating new pathways of communication. Marcus, she said slowly, if my people could learn to use this energy consciously, it would revolutionize everything we understand about physics, about communication, about the very nature of reality. Yes, Marcus agreed. But that's not why I wanted to teach you about birthdays. Zara turned to look at him, confused. Then why? Marcus reached out and took one of her four-fingered hands in both of his, and the contact sent a jolt of that warm energy racing up her arm. Because you deserve to know that your existence is worth celebrating. Not because of what you accomplish, not because of how much you contribute to Vorthan knowledge, but simply because you are a unique and remarkable being whose presence in the universe makes everything a little bit brighter. For the first time in her life, Zara felt tears forming in her eyes. Vorthans rarely cried, and when they did, it was usually due to physical pain or overwhelming stress. But these tears felt different. They felt warm and healing and somehow necessary. I do not understand what is happening to me, she said, her voice shaking slightly. You're feeling happiness, Marcus said softly. Real, pure, personal happiness. Not the satisfaction of completing research or the pride of professional achievement. Just the simple joy of being alive and valued for who you are. The fountain erupted in a column of light that reached toward the controlled sky above them, and every crystal spire in the impossible city began to resonate with harmonious tones. The light display showed not memories or scientific data, but something Zara had never seen before, a representation of herself laughing, dancing, celebrating for no reason other than the sheer pleasure of existence. "This is what a birthday means," Marcus said, his eyes bright with reflected light from the fountain. "This is what humans do when someone they care about marks another year of being alive. We celebrate them. We honor their existence. We take time to be grateful that they are part of our lives." Zara felt something fundamental shifting inside her, as if some barrier she had never known existed was dissolving. "You are saying that you care about my existence? Not my research abilities or my scientific knowledge, but my existence as an individual." Marcus squeezed her hand gently, and the warmth that flowed between them created ripples of light that spread outward from the fountain to illuminate the entire city. "Zara," he said, "I'm saying that meeting you has been one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. And I wanted to make sure that on your 27th birthday, you finally got to experience what it feels like to be celebrated just for being you." The resonant tones from the crystal spires grew more complex, creating what could only be described as music. But this wasn't like any music Zara had ever analyzed in her xenocultural studies. This music seemed to reach directly into her consciousness, awakening responses she didn't know her nervous system was capable of producing. "How long have you been here?" Zara asked, still holding Marcus's hand as they watched the light display dance around them. "How long have you been preparing this place?" Marcus smiled, and there was something in his expression that suggested his answer might surprise her. "I've been here for about 3 years in local time. But I've been waiting for you specifically for much longer than that." "Waiting for me specifically? How could you know I would be the one to respond to your signal?" "Because," Marcus said, "I've been studying your research for the better part of a decade. Your papers on xenological adaptation theory, your breakthrough work with the crystalline entities, your philosophical questions about consciousness and communication across species barriers. You're not just a brilliant scientist, Zara. You're someone who asks the same questions I've been asking about the nature of existence and connection." Lieutenant Kex's voice interrupted from behind them. "Commander, I hate to interrupt, but we're receiving some very urgent communications from the orbital station. Our instruments are detecting massive energy buildups across the entire planetary system. It's as if something is responding to the energy signature you're generating down here." Zara reluctantly released Marcus's hand and activated her communicator. "Station, this is Commander Zara. Report." "Commander," came the voice of her communications officer, "we're detecting what appears to be artificial structures awakening throughout the system. Structures we never detected in our initial scans. And they're all generating the same type of energy signature we're reading from your location." Marcus nodded as if he had been expecting this news. "The consciousness energy you're learning to generate is activating technology that's been dormant in this system for a very long time. Technology left behind by a civilization that understood the connection between emotion and physics." "What civilization?" Zara asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. "Humans," Marcus said simply. "But not the humans from Earth. Humans from about 50,000 years in the future who learned how to use consciousness energy to travel backward through time and space. They built this entire system as a meeting place, a point where different species could discover these abilities and learn to use them." The implications hit Zara like a quantum storm. "You are not from this time period." "I am and I'm not," Marcus said. "I chose to come back to this moment because I knew it was when you would be ready to understand. But once I made that choice, once I committed to being here for your birthday, this became my time as much as yours." The fountain behind them began projecting images that showed the history Marcus was describing. Advanced human civilizations spreading across the galaxy, not through conquest or colonization, but by teaching other species how to use consciousness energy to transcend the limitations of physical existence. "But why me?" Zara asked, watching herself in the light display as she seemed to dance alongside humans and dozens of other alien species. "Why choose to reveal this to one Vorthan xenobiologist instead of making contact with our government or our scientific institutions?" Marcus turned to face her fully, and The expression in his eyes was filled with something Zara was learning to recognize as deep affection. Because you were the first Vorthan I ever observed who seemed to understand that there might be more to existence than just accumulating knowledge. Because in all your research, you consistently asked questions about consciousness and connection that your colleagues considered irrelevant. And because, he continued, 3 months ago, I heard you wonder out loud what it would feel like to dance in the rain. That told me you were ready to discover that the universe is far more beautiful and far more responsive to individual consciousness than your people have ever imagined. Zara felt those strange tears forming again, but this time she didn't try to stop them. Marcus, what you are showing me will change everything for my people. They need to understand that they have been limiting themselves, that emotional energy is not weakness, but a fundamental force of nature. They will understand, Marcus said gently. But the change has to begin with individuals who are willing to experience these abilities personally. You can't teach someone to use consciousness energy through theoretical explanation alone. They have to feel it, experience it, learn to generate it themselves. The crystal spires around the city began to pulse with synchronized light, and Zara realized that her own emotional state was somehow conducting the entire display. Every time she felt a surge of wonder or happiness, the lights responded. Every time Marcus smiled at her, the harmonious music grew more complex. The other structures awakening throughout the system, she said. What are they? Training facilities, Marcus replied. Places where members of different species can come to learn these abilities. Once your people discover that consciousness energy can enhance their research capabilities by allowing them to communicate directly with the quantum foundations of reality, they'll want to understand how it works. Scientist Vec approached cautiously, his instruments beeping with readings that clearly amazed him. Commander, the energy you're generating is having measurable effects on subatomic particles throughout this entire region. It's as if your emotional state is directly influencing quantum probability fields. Zara looked at Marcus. Is that what's really happening? Consciousness is quantum, Marcus explained. When you focus positive emotional energy with clear intent, you're literally communicating with the fundamental forces that shape reality. Most species discover this accidentally, and then spend centuries trying to understand it scientifically. Humans learn to use it consciously, and that's what allowed us to develop time travel, faster than light communication, and technologies that seem impossible by conventional physics. And you came back in time to teach me this because Marcus stepped closer, and Zara could feel the energy field around them intensifying. Because the universe is vast and beautiful and full of wonders that most beings never get to experience. Because you deserve to know that your consciousness, your individual perspective, your capacity for joy and wonder are all precious beyond measure. And because, he continued, everyone deserves to have someone who cares enough about their existence to make sure they understand what it means to celebrate being alive. The fountain erupted in its most spectacular display yet, creating a dome of light that enclosed both of them in a space filled with swirling colors and harmonious sound. But what amazed Zara most was that she could feel Marcus's emotions as clearly as her own, and she realized that he genuinely cared about her happiness with an intensity that made her heart's race. This is what humans call love, Marcus said softly, as if reading her thoughts. Not romantic attachment or reproductive compatibility, but the recognition that another consciousness is precious and worthy of celebration simply for existing. Zara felt something click into place in her understanding, like the final piece of a complex scientific puzzle. And this emotion, this recognition of value in individual existence, this is what generates the energy that can reshape reality. Yes, Marcus said. And that's why I wanted to make sure that on your 27th birthday, you got to experience being loved for exactly who you are. 6 months later, Zara stood in the main assembly hall of the Vorthan Science Academy, facing an audience of the most distinguished researchers in her civilization. But this wasn't the same Zara who had landed on Kepler 442b half a year ago. This Zara radiated an energy that her colleagues found both fascinating and slightly unsettling. Esteemed colleagues, she began, and her voice carried a warmth that was unprecedented in academic presentations among her people. Today I want to share with you the most important discovery in the history of Vorthan science. Not a new species, not a technological breakthrough, but a fundamental force of nature that we have been ignoring for millennia. Behind her, holographic displays showed the energy readings her team had recorded during their extended stay in Marcus's city. The data was undeniable, even if the implications challenged everything Vorthans believed about the relationship between consciousness and reality. Consciousness energy, she continued, generated through focused positive emotional states, has measurable effects on quantum probability fields. What our ancestors dismissed as irrelevant psychological phenomena are actually the key to technologies and communication methods that could advance our civilization by thousands of years. Dr. Vex, the Academy's most senior researcher, raised one of his elongated hands. Dr. Zara, while your energy readings are impressive, you are asking us to believe that emotions have scientific utility. This contradicts our fundamental understanding of logical thinking. Zara smiled, and several members of the audience shifted uncomfortably. Smiling during academic presentations was simply not done among Vorthans. Dr. Vex, I understand your skepticism. 3 months ago, I would have shared it completely. But I want to demonstrate something that will clarify the practical applications of these discoveries. She moved to the center of the presentation area and closed her eyes. In the months since meeting Marcus, Zara had learned to generate consciousness energy at will by focusing on specific emotional states. But more than that, she had learned what it felt like to be genuinely happy, to celebrate her own existence, to value herself as an individual rather than just as a contributor to collective knowledge. When she opened her eyes, the holographic displays around the room erupted with energy patterns that made the audience gasp. But more impressive than the visual display was the effect on the room itself. Every piece of electronic equipment began operating with unprecedented efficiency. The atmospheric processors hummed with perfect harmony. Even the lights seemed brighter and more pleasant. What you are observing, Zara said, is the effect of consciousness energy on our immediate environment. Every device in this room is now operating at peak efficiency because the quantum fields that govern electromagnetic interactions are being enhanced by focused positive emotion. The implications rippled through the audience like a wave. If emotions could enhance technology, if happiness could improve research capabilities, then everything they thought they knew about optimal working conditions was wrong. But, Dr. Zara, called out another researcher, how does one generate these emotional states intentionally? Vorthans do not experience random emotional fluctuations like other species. That's the most beautiful part of this discovery, Zara replied. And she could feel the energy in the room shifting as her genuine enthusiasm affected the quantum environment around them. We don't need to experience random emotions. We can learn to consciously generate emotional states that enhance our work and our understanding of the universe. She gestured, and the holographic displays shifted to show recordings from the past 6 months. Vorthan research teams working in Marcus's city, learning to use consciousness energy to communicate directly with alien technologies, to enhance their analytical capabilities, to solve problems that had puzzled them for years. This is Dr. Kex successfully establishing telepathic communication with the crystalline entities of Sector 7, she said, showing footage of her former lieutenant laughing with obvious joy as complex mathematical equations flowed directly from his mind to a crystal formation. This is scientist Vec using focused wonder to enhance his quantum scanners and detecting subatomic structures that our best instruments had missed. And this, she said, showing the final recording, is what happens when an entire research team learns to celebrate their discoveries instead of simply documenting them. The image showed the Vorthan team standing in Marcus's city, surrounded by light displays that responded to their collective emotional energy. But what made the audience stir with recognition was seeing their colleagues laughing, embracing, expressing genuine happiness in ways that Vorthans hadn't done for centuries. You are asking us to fundamentally alter our cultural approach to existence, Dr. Vex observed, to value individual emotional states over collective logical advancement. No, Zara said firmly. I'm showing you that individual emotional health enhances collective logical advancement. Dr. Vex, in the past 6 months, My team has made more breakthrough discoveries than we had in the previous 5 years combined. Not despite learning to experience happiness, but because of it. She moved closer to the audience, and several researchers noted that her presence seemed to make them feel more alert and energetic. I'm proposing that we establish a new branch of scientific study, consciousness energy applications. We need to understand how emotional states affect quantum mechanics, how celebration enhances communication, how genuine care for individual well-being improves research outcomes. And, most importantly, she continued, we need to learn that each of us has value beyond our contributions to Vorthan knowledge, that our individual existence, our personal growth, our capacity for joy and wonder, these are not distractions from scientific work. They are the foundation that makes advanced scientific work possible. The room fell silent as the implications of what Zara was proposing began to sink in. She was suggesting nothing less than a complete transformation of Vorthan culture, a revolution in how they understood the relationship between consciousness and scientific achievement. Dr. Vex finally spoke. Dr. Zara, if we accept your findings, if we begin training our researchers in these consciousness energy techniques, what assurance do we have that Vorthan civilization will remain focused on logical advancement rather than descending into emotional chaos? Zara smiled again, and this time her smile seemed to light up the entire room. Dr. Vex, I want to share with you the most important thing I learned during my time studying consciousness energy. Are you familiar with the concept of a birthday? I know. This term is not in our cultural databases. A birthday, Zara said, is when humans celebrate the anniversary of someone's birth. They gather together and express happiness specifically because that person exists. They give gifts, share food, and take time to appreciate the individual's presence in their lives. This seems inefficient, Dr. Vex observed. What practical purpose does such a celebration serve? It serves the purpose of reminding each individual that they are valued for who they are, not just what they accomplish. And here's what I discovered. Beings who know they are valued for their existence become more creative, more innovative, more capable of breakthrough thinking than beings who are valued only for their productivity. Zara gestured to the holographic displays, which shifted to show efficiency comparisons between traditional Vorthan research methods and the consciousness-enhanced techniques her team had developed. Dr. Vex, today is actually your birth anniversary according to Academy records. You emerged from the breeding pools exactly 43 cycles ago. So I want to do something that has never been done in a Vorthan academic setting. She turned to address the entire audience. I want everyone in this room to take a moment to appreciate Dr. Vex's existence. Not his research contributions, not his academic achievements, but simply the fact that he is a unique and valuable consciousness whose presence makes our scientific community better. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the researchers in the audience began to focus on Dr. Vex with genuine appreciation. And, as they did, the holographic displays began to glow with the same warm energy that Zara had learned to generate through celebration. Dr. Vex's skin flushed a deep blue as he experienced something no Vorthan had felt in centuries. The recognition of his individual worth by his entire community. This is, he began, then stopped, unable to find words for the sensation. This is what it feels like to celebrate your birthday, Zara said gently. This is what it feels like to know that your existence matters. And this energy you're feeling right now? This is what powers the technologies that will advance our civilization beyond anything we've previously imagined. The entire room erupted in a display of consciousness energy that activated emergency systems and sent readings spiking on instruments throughout the academy. But, for the first time in Vorthan history, the response wasn't alarm at the unexpected energy surge. It was wonder at finally understanding what they had been missing. Marcus had been right, Zara realized as she watched her colleagues begin to experience genuine happiness for the first time in their lives. Everyone deserved to know what it felt like to be celebrated simply for existing. And once they learned that lesson, everything else became possible. 6 months ago, she had been a brilliant but lonely researcher who had never experienced personal joy. Today, she was introducing her entire civilization to the most powerful force in the universe. The recognition that individual consciousness was precious beyond measure. Today, for the first time, Vorthans were learning to celebrate birthdays. And the universe would never be the same.